different, it's just a way of, a really nice way of framing, that I think particular to this neighborhood. I've lived on Park Slope, I know what that feels like for 12 years. So like, this has a specific conundrum of very old and very new diverse groups mixing in a very short period of time. So it's kind of really good for us to find ways of common ground, for us to speak, to just, we all want the same thing, we all want better, enriched, lifestyles that we pay for. Actively.
That we actively pay for.
We actively pay for with real money.
This is a newer tool that is built on top of the Who Owns What platform. Basically, if you go to a building on Who Owns What, I sort of in purple the button that you would click to get this tool, but it says follow building, and if you go through the steps and sign up, you will get this weekly email. This is a screenshot of an example of a weekly email that will send you about the building. You sign up for buildings for you, but every week we'll send you updates about the number of new complaints, the number of new violations, the number of new eviction filings that are happening in the address that you signed up for, alerts to get. Just as an example of how people are using this, I'll give an example from a tenant organizer and an example from a tenant as well. So these building alerts gave tenants an action plan to systematically file complaints and better document their building's decrease in services. As a result of that work, they had a huge win when DHCR did not approve the landlord's rent increase. As an organizer, I'm always trying to find systematic ways for how tenants can organize themselves for the process to be truly community-led. That's what this particular tool does for this person. From a tenant's point of view, management gaslights us, saying there are no problems with JustFix or with this particular tool. You can say, no, I have proof. And this tenant actually printed out their emails, the email alerts we were sending, and brought it to the judge, who ordered the landlord to fix the holes in the wall, to fix the leak. The information gives me a way to say I'm not the only one dealing with this. It gives me confidence to report what's going on because I see that other people are too. It helps me help my son to advocate for him and for other people in the building who are bedridden, who are old and disabled. So that's again, just from this email every week, getting it and seeing what's going on in their building and that they're not the only ones dealing with it. And there are these links in the email that they can then click to learn more about each type of issue. So we'll take you directly to learn about what were the complaints being filed that week for that building, what were the violations cited in that building, and so forth.
So wait, people can sign up for an email about their building?
Yes,
before?
yeah, if you go to your buildings page on Who Owns What,
Wow.
this purple, I circled it in purple just
Yeah,
so you can
yeah.
see. But you can click follow building and sign up, and we'll send you these every week. We just released this new tool that, thinking about signing up for an individual building or address, you can now sign up for an entire geographic area, and we'll send you similar updates. In this case, this is just a screenshot where I signed up for 3 zip codes in the South Bronx, but you can sign up for community boards, for census tracts if you want to get really granular. You can sign up for political districts, your assembly members district, etc. Senate as well. And we'll send you a weekly email. This is a screenshot just up the top of that email, but it's a long email, and we'll send you each week the top 5 buildings that are showing signs of tenant risk of displacement based on kind of like an average of a bunch of different issues. Like, does this building have a ton of complaints this week, a ton of violations? A lot of these issues we've been kind of mentioning. And we'll also give a list of any addresses in the district or area that you've signed up for that have litigations against landlords, which is really helpful for organizers as well to kind of see like what buildings have tenants brought a lawsuit against their landlord. So you can like work with it. Generally that means there's like something like we would consider like a tenant leader in that building who's like up for it. Anyway, so we just released this, and we're really excited to see how people use it, and hope that it has similar outcomes, but maybe at a more kind of like broad level outside of the individual buildings. So we're seeing like lots of impact and connection being built in individual buildings through these tools. And so interested with area alerts to see what happens across buildings as well, at the community level. And like, ideally provides insights at the community board level and for city council, kind of constituent service departments and outreach teams and stuff, so, yeah, just another tool in the toolkit. So these were kind of like several of the more data-oriented tools that I mentioned. How are we on time, by the way?
So we are
Pretty
approaching
short.
8, we're getting
Okay.
pretty close.
Yeah.
We probably got like 6 minutes left if
Okay.
we want to, if everybody's okay with that. I know we still have a decent amount to do on our agenda, so if possible,
Yeah, to wrap up, yeah.
to wrap
I'll
up and
just-
get to questions.
I'll just show, just so you know, to go to our website to look through for a bunch of different tools that we have that help you kind of like with individual issues. And so this example, this site is called Good Cause NYC, and you go through a series of steps from typing in your address and then eventually getting a result to learning if your building is covered by the new law called Good Cause Eviction that was passed last year. It extends new protections to many tenants who never had any, who are living in market rate housing, basically not rent stabilized tenants. The trick is it's really complicated to understand, or it can be really complicated to learn if you're actually covered, if your building meets the criteria of this law. So this tool we put together to try and make it as easy as possible. This tool helps you get your rent history, which is really important to learn if you're rent stabilized, if your unit has ever been, let alone still is, and ideally to learn as well if you're being overcharged for rent. So this tool at the website, or you can also text message, we have a number that you can text to get this document. So you'll get a document that looks something like that, and sometimes it's pretty clear what it's saying, sometimes it's not. We link to an article that we have about clarifying some of how to read it. We're also gonna work on a tool shortly that helps kind of you for free analyze it as well. So to kind of do some of those calculations for you that can be really complicated to understand. Some more quotes about impact. This tool, another step-by-step tool that helps you get repairs from your landlord if they haven't listened to you yet. Basically, you go through and select the rooms that you're having issues in, then select the actual issues that you're having in each room, and then we'll generate a customized letter that we send for free for you to your landlord through certified mail to create a paper trail of evidence saying I communicated these issues to my landlord. It lets your landlord know I know my rights. The letter that we generate also has your the kind of civil codes that the landlord is responsible for maintaining their building and the types of penalties that they might be liable for if they don't make these repairs. And we find, some landlords just are never going to take action and do the right thing. But we find that around 50% of landlords, after getting this letter, will go ahead and start to improve the conditions. And then, let's see, just I know I'm so short on time. I think this is the last example, is another step-by-step tool that helps you learn if you're eligible for what's known as right to counsel, which is a free attorney in housing court if you're facing eviction. And on the results page, it kind of goes through a step-by-step process of where to go, where your housing court is, depending on your zip code, which you would have entered in an earlier step, as well as expectations around filing something that's called an answer, which is basically your defense to an eviction, and tells you kind of like where to go do that and things to know about that process. And of course, where to go to connect with an attorney, which actually you can only do on the date of your eviction case, but you have to go before that to go file your answer. So it's a very complicated process that there aren't very many resources for, so this is just one that tries to break that system into chunks that might be more digestible. We're going to be working on a new tool that then helps you file what's called that answer. So you know, again, it's just complex process, intimidating process after complex process after intimidating process. So, there are lots of opportunities to improve these things, and we're kind of taking it one step at a time. So yeah, would love to hear from you all, and hear what your community needs are, what ideas you have for new tools, ways to collaborate on getting the word out on these tools and other resources. yeah, more people know what their rights are and have the means to assert those rights and to enforce them in court if need be. I think, yeah, that's enough. That's what I'm thinking.
Great, thank you so much. Just wanna gauge the floor and see if anybody has any more questions that they'd like to ask while we still have Joel. Joel, are you staying or are you gonna run out?
I'm gonna take off. Yeah.
You're gonna stay?
Yeah. No,
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
you're gonna take off,
I'm
okay, I
gonna
totally
I got a
understand.
toddler at home. I only have a few hours until I wake up again.
Totally understand, okay, so,
Yeah, of course.
Thank you
No,
so
thank you
much.
so much, everyone.
Thank you, that
And
was
you've got my
great.
contact if anyone wants it. Yeah, you know how to reach me. Yeah.
for sure,
What-
you sharing your
what was your
information.
name?
Joel Stillman. I think is it? I don't know if it's in
Is it
It might
on
be.
here? But I can share out information at the end if you wanna, just come find me and I'll take it and I'll email it to you.
Yeah, and thank you for all the work that you do and for coming out and being interested in your community. That's literally like nothing happens
Thank you
without
so
that.
much.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joel, have a beautiful night, happy Monday. Thanks, guys.
That was really a great presentation.
2 for 2, your girl's out here, let's just say, I'm just saying, when it comes to affordability and community-based projects, let's keep it going, y'all. So just wanna see how people are feeling now that Joel's gone, we can have maybe a little bit more deconstructed of a conversation, maybe just general takeaways, thoughts, opinions, feelings.
I think we should invite you to the community there.
Okay.
Just to
really
get
good.
more exposure.
So he can have some, like a little, maybe part of the table, so he can speak with the community. I think that would be a really cool idea also, and we'd get Just Fix out there.
I think this would have been a really good presentation for the full committee, even though it was small. Maybe a shorter version, because there's more people on the full committee where they could share this with a lot of people that it would be beneficial to besides ourselves.
Oh, like the general meeting, so one thing, I'm gonna follow up, and I should have asked him while I was here, I was gonna ask if I could submit the slides, so that people, when we have the general meeting packets, it would be like, you know how we have the land use slides, or if people wanna do ULURP processes, that those presentations are typically included. I thought it would be really awesome if we included the Just Fix, so that way if
Yeah.
people heard about it, couldn't make it, or virtually, that they could have it more like paper, and also the virtual copy, because it does get emailed to
Yeah.
everybody.
I mean, I found that I
Went straight
obviously
on it.
I jumped straight on it, and I ran a bunch of tools. And, you know, that overview, just to be like, let's see what this is.
Yeah.
So like, what's nice about it is that, you know, you do have to have a level of comprehension and information to kind of like, because it points you to a lot of information. But I think the site does a really good job. It's got 4 basic tabs, an overview, a timeline, and he didn't touch on the summary, but the summary is really good.
I
The
was
summary
touching on the
puts
summary.
everything at the end
Yeah.
and basically comes the closest to explain it into like layman's terms for a resident. What does this mean to me? So you can, and it's in paragraphs, and it kind of, you know, breaks down all of the components from complaints to violations. It also does a really nice extra thing of, it compares it to the citywide average. The citywide average is 0.08. So you'll know if your building is above or below that sort of average. And what that does, what I like about the site is it implies further things, right? So when you see the map is a game changer,
Yeah.
and you see how certain ownerships of portfolio based on where all those dots are in certain districts with certain groups of people already living there and how long they've been living there, and what the complaint and violation correlation to those groups are. And then you start realizing, you look at the timeline and you realize that this building was sold to an equity in 2019, and you see how those changes from an equity ownership and a flush of cash does to a building for the next 4 years after that, then you start to get a big picture of like how, because then to your point, it starts looking to everybody on land use wants to know what's going on, right? Everybody on funding allocation wants to know what's going on, because they all of them correlate, all those strains end at real estate, they end at property. So you start seeing not just what's happening to my building, but where is the trend going in my neighborhood? And am I on the winning side of this, or am I on the losing side of this? So how do I prepare from from an advocacy point of view, and for talking to my neighbors and talking to my relatives and the people in my building, what do we wanna know so that we can see not just what's happening next year as far as protection plans, but what is this gonna look like 5 years down the road for my district or for my community? And I think because it's so much information, that's gonna be one of the strongest tools for each resident, because you're getting to see a forecast.
Yeah. I think you bring up some really interesting points when it comes to the visual components, which I will say as housing, that's like one of my favorite things that I look forward to bringing into, which is why we have maps today of the building. So go back to last year when we were talking about the building profile, something that Fred was very adamant about us kind of working towards. And I remember last year looking at the committee being like, all right guys, time to get to work, let's build a database of essentially all the properties. And I remember, Kendall Christensen was like, what graduates are you trying to put on this? Because like that's a lot of work. And I remember one night I stayed up and tried to do Washington Avenue, and I realized I did West Side Washington, looked at all of the fracturing of streets versus avenues, and I was like, I'll be like 35 by the time this is done, and it'll be a whole new property lines and owners of this building. So like, how do we think smarter about like accumulating data that already exists? Hence, these maps come from Pluto datasets, Open NYC data. This is all of the, at least citywide agency information that tugs or has different features for every building within the district, which according to my attribute table is around 6,948 properties. Right, that's a lot of time that we no longer have to do. So one of the things that I think moving forward, and this ties into Pinnacle Bankruptcy and Pinnacle Group, which is something that I emailed everybody about previously. We can definitely get into that, but some of these things that I feel like would be really awesome for us to kind of get into practice, especially with buildings, is that there's a lot of different departments, there's a lot of different agencies. How do we put together information for people, regular folks that don't do this for their 9 to 5, that they're able to visually understand the building demographics within the district and also how it's changing. I think it would be really awesome for us to kind of visualize this in a way, which was part of like my directions last year, wanting to kind of see this in a visual makeup. So this is why, at least I started with the building class, the building by year, and I had some other ones like units, how many units per building, but then I started to look at these maps and I was like, these maps are really dry. You know, like this doesn't really display or portray, in my opinion, what the district is and what kind of district that we want for our housing. So that's something that I feel like part of our conversation today, I kind of like to play around with. What are the qualities of life? What are the things within the district that like aren't necessarily portrayed in data sets? You know, these are like very quantitative numerical values that are being put by year. How many units, how many floors, you know, these are just very strict representations but don't necessarily display or demonstrate what the housing situation is within the district specifically. So those were some of my thought processes on why I wanted to bring the maps forward, and I will be sending it obviously via email so that y'all can play around. Yeah, by all means.
If I make an observation,
Yep.
don't take it as a negative critique, it would be very helpful if you include the street names on
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it becomes impossible to understand, you know, what they represent. The very minimum thing to be able to relate to it is to know the street. Do you know your street
Yeah.
and the buildings around it? Because most people don't know everything in town.
Well, one of the
If you look at
things that I,
map online.
say that, Teresa?
If you look online, you can see it.
I was gonna say, so these are static maps. I do intend to post these and have them be virtual, that you can toggle individually, similar to a Zola map. So it'll be like a CB9 toggle map, and that's why I would love for us to kind of go about like the other features. This doesn't have to be now, but it will be building upon this, you know, like we have these structural ideas of what these maps look like. These are straight from Pluto, these are straight from Open NYC data. This is the very quantitative information, but it doesn't necessarily tell us like, so it makes me think of the community, why am I spacing on this word? Oh my gosh, the community fair, geez Louise, sorry. Is that what it is called, the community fair?
It is called
Okay,
community
the community fair, like imagine we did a tabling feature of like, where would you like to see development in your neighborhood? Or what would you like to see, and being able to put that on a map. So that way, when developers, they have their ideas, and they're going to use Zola, they're going to use these different services. But it would be really awesome if we kind of like put out a unified map of what the development we want in our neighborhood. You know, people being able to input and spatially configure, because I think a lot of this technocratic, you know, imposition coming into development is that like a lot of community people don't know their neighborhood, or the assumption is that we don't know. So it would be nice to be like, we do kind of have an idea, and we do kind of have some plans that like, we would like to see this part of the neighborhood, we would like to see this turn into a park, you know? And being able to spatially configure that in a way that like, if I saw that, I'd be like, alright, these people, I know what they're talking about over here. So yeah, does anybody have any questions on maps so far, thoughts on that?
Is open data the primary source that they allocated the information from?
This is me, I made these maps, and yes, this
No,
all.
not the map, I'm talking about for the presentation.
Oh,
Was that
he got-
from open data, no?
Well, he got his from like DOF, DB, HPD, he got it from all of, yeah, from,
City and
city and state agencies, and compiled them all into
How do you
one
get the
site.
permission to do so?
Say that again?
How do you get the permission?
Going about grants, applications, and processes, also working with council members and political officials, and also working with other organizations that are involved in these processes, and distribution of information through publicly accessible knowledge.
A lot of it is freedom. It's, you know,
Foil, okay,
it's just, yeah, we just
Well,
don't
he
have
did
it
it
in one
so
place.
Correct.
Oh, to my knowledge,
Right.
this is more
Right.
like
Right.
a contract agreement
It's
for
all
them to
there.
be
It's
able to
all
distribute
there, you don't
this
have to go to
information.
Department of Records, and you don't have to go to
At least the
FISA.
right kind.
Right.
It's something that should have been done long
I'm
ago.
telling
Most of
you,
it
yeah.
is publicly available, it's just, no.
now we need something like
Somebody's
no
gonna
politician.
benefit from us.
Where you getting your money from?
That's not funny, yeah. I was gonna say, one thing I really look forward to with his map is the tax abatements and
Yeah.
the funding
Right.
components, which I think will be really important with affordable housing being public-private.
Yes, I wanted to
partnerships.
ask him, but I wasn't sure because, like, I was, you know, I'm looking, similar to you, I was looking at so many buildings, right? And I did see that a couple of buildings were under the 421A plan, well, exemption under in his data set. But if you selected and went further into like HPD, it wasn't listed.
Right.
So there's like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
I
that
brought it up.
discrepancy,
So-
yeah.
I brought it up earlier.
HPD, it's not listed at all, or?
No, the building won't be listed at all, cause they have their own data set as well,
Yeah,
right? And it prints out like, you know, all the buildings in Brooklyn by neighborhood that.
But HPD doesn't run after
But
everybody to try to
exactly,
say-
so you
Yeah,
don't,
Yeah,
right,
they are
so you don't know.
supposed to come to HPD
There's
with
gonna
all of
be-
that information,
Right.
that's the thing.
So that may throw people off too, because if
Yeah,
you know, if I'm a tenant
Yeah.
and I'm looking,
Right.
I'm like, I'm not sure, like, are they covered, are they not? And
Right,
who do I go to find out for sure, cause they may owe me money.
right.
So how come he has it and they don't?
Maybe because he got information from different places.
Yeah.
Because if you have to go to HPD in order to give them that information, maybe the source that he got it from is someone who reports it,
Right.
who they have to report
Because
to.
HPD doesn't have a
not necessarily-
component within itself to go
Collect
out
it.
and collect it,
You
right?
have to submit.
You have to submit
Yes.
it, so for example, let's say there was going to be a sale or a transaction of a property, right? The seller, the point of HPD being there is that that's where the seller goes to go, before I do anything, let's check the health. It's like the full general practitioner health check of that building or unit,
Right.
right? So that's, information is supposed to be there.
I think we're publicly accessible information, especially for things like this. I think we're assuming, like, yes, in theory,
Oh,
but
totally in
you know,
theory,
but
yeah.
in practice, in like,
Right,
we know,
It's not, yeah.
right, you know, and so like, is it worth it? No, in my opinion. He got the information. Is he sharing it? Yes, he is.
Mhm.
Do we care where it's coming from? As long as he's sharing it,
Right.
because
Right.
I have more access to resources and information as a tenant that I wouldn't necessarily have on my own volition. Not to mention the fact that even navigating this information as your own, not to say that Googling isn't a thing, not to say that people aren't full of agency to go about reasoning, but he's going through the due process of sharing and distributing,
Yeah.
and putting it together and giving it for free.
Yeah, of course, it's not about
So-
skepticism, but you still need to verify where the information is coming from, and as a community person, if we can know where we can get the information, to either cross-reference or in the future, because I'm just out of information purposes.
I understand.
I was gonna say, it might be inconsequential of asking it, but it was just for my purpose of having the information, because for example, for like, to defend ourselves, I don't need somebody else to come outside my community and tell me how to defend myself. They may be able to give me a resource or a digital tool that I didn't have access to, so I have to be able to identify why was there a discrepancy of me not being able to have access to that, but they do. So if the reason was because of, like you said, foils and permits and things of that nature, where we know the corruption, we know that it's not just, we know that it's not racially just, I need to be able to pinpoint that, and if I have to take further action, whatever that may require, that's how I do that, because this isn't a solve all either. There's 311, there's all these things, but there might be discrepancies in there to where I could articulate that if I'm specifically somebody, like y'all said about the building. I could have been the one of the building that HPD doesn't have it reported, but I know I'm aware of it, and now I could report it. Lastly, for my own purposes with my community org, we're trying to look for eviction information, and it depends on the person, their autonomy when they design these websites, apps, how they're able to empower themselves intellectually or to their, credential capacity to be able to do so. But most of the maps that the city provides, they don't do it by zip code. So if I needed to present something to this community board with my issue on homelessness, which I'll get to later about what are we doing for that, which is serious, but we don't talk about the serious issues enough in these committee meetings. I'm gonna wrap up. But in regard to that, I don't have a website to narrow it down to present it as evidence. Then it just sounds general and vague. So if there's a lack of that, maybe I could, see how can he do it, or does he know somebody who does have it? It's all about information if we don't know. Because when I went through my personal eviction proceeding, I'm aware of all these things, but I had to go through it. Nobody told me before, and a lot of people still aren't gonna know until you're going through it yourself. And when I'm there, the Jewish, my landlord is telling me they have an eviction database and I'll never be able to get a home again. But when I go to the courts and I'm asking them to cross-reference, is that true? They're like, oh no, there's no such thing. But if you can get this information, and when I go on the internet, I see everybody's eviction by address and legal first and last name. So there's a disconnect there.
You're not wrong.
Wow.
Totally not wrong. Suki, you also had a comment.
Yeah, so I wanted to suggest another possible data resource. I'm sure some of you have probably heard of it, the New York City Equitable Development Data Explorer, which I think was created by, who was it created by, Teresa? Was it City Planning or, and that correlates a lot of the information around housing, affordability, demographic information, so you can see by community district, they tell you like what percentage of your housing is affordable to people at like 60% of AMI, 80% of AMI, 40% of AMI, things like that. I'm not exactly, I'd love to know where exactly they're getting their data from.
I was gonna say, I
But-
think when it comes to those specificities, internal data sets for units, I get very skeptical.
Yes.
Especially we can't even get accurate information for the amount of registered units in occupancy versus vacancy.
Right.
But yeah, we're gonna
Right,
have accurate
so,
information
and like, for example, they'll
racial
say like what
demographics.
percentage of your
These are
units
publicly
are
accessible.
unstabilized and things like that.
Yeah.
And, again, I think, I would love even to get somebody here who worked on that and just talk to them about some of these things. I think some of their data is coming from the census, some of it might be coming from HPD databases, I think the city actually goes out to landlords to survey them, so, and a lot of that data gets published in aggregate under the housing and vacancy survey that's once every 3 years, but they don't release the district by district breakdown in that big report. So these people that did the Equitable Development Data Explorer might have access to that district level data, and so I think it'd be very interesting to talk to them and, find out what they have, where it's coming from, and I think that would be really helpful too in terms of
What was the name you said?
NYC Equitable
development data
Data
explorer. They have a whole website, you can Google it, it's super interesting and helpful.
But I can say this is a similar format as Population Fact Finder. It's a similar demographic distribution, even the way the site is compiled. So I would not be surprised if it's not similar.
They're
Similar
referencing each other.
departments that this is like an interdepartment evolution, because it's the exact same toggle on the side, the way that the tables are even, so, they're very similar, which makes sense though, it is through the city, this is NYC.
Huge.
But again, these are still city agencies, this is still departmental, institutional representations of maps. Not to say that us are not in this room are, like we're not 100,000 people, us is 15. But each one of us go home to a specific locality in our neighborhood that has interpretations, experiences that should be something worth coming and talking about and representing in a meaningful way, especially those of us that participate and communicate with your community, your neighbors, like what are the components in your locality that you feel like are not represented in these maps, in these data sources, because data is definitely pushing the needle as to the directions that we're pursuing, how we go about our development. So it would be really awesome to see us like kind of go about some counter knowledge, go about counter sourcing some of these sites, because we are able to do that. Like that is something that we can do.
Yeah.
So I just wanna like insert that agency, I just wanna like insert that agency. There are definitely hierarchies, but also like let's not remove how we all operate within our district, because like at the end of the day, we're the ones that live here. So that being said, I do wanna try to get us out by like 8:45-ish,
And can you just add to let him know, for me personally, I would like to see, the lawsuits for these landlords. I don't know if he mentioned that specifically was indicated in his site, but that way I could see how.
Isn't that available via HPD, like previous cases, whether they're open or closed, that
I think the site shows open, I don't know if it,
provides?
It doesn't list it. But it
it'll
shows.
show open cases.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I
like
don't know if
when-
it'll show like a history of cases,
He has
but if
something
it,
with worse landlords, what I'm specifically referencing is when the tenant then sues for
Right.
discrimination.
oh,
Because if I
He-
just
he
say,
does.
I would like,
There is a link, but I don't know, to your point,
The
I don't know if
follow-up.
it's a specific case,
Yeah,
what it says,
yeah.
it does say like, he even has like a section that says, tenant harassment,
right,
like tenant harassment complaints, it's broken down pretty well.
and I think there's a
well,
link.
that I could
as
understand
well.
because that's all in conjunction with the city, so that's pretty simple, cause they
Right.
only allow the tenant to sue for harassment and repairs, which
Right.
is nothing. So
Okay.
I know where he got that information.
You're talking about civil.
I'm talking about, for example, when he mentioned the comment, which is the reviews, he had indicated in there that the landlord had to pay billions of dollars. So I'm talking about those specific examples because legally, paralegal or working with a legal society, I can reference that information to see how I can empower my community to sue. What are the claims we can make, whatever, because they don't have points to put discrimination.
Right.
If we're talking about racial inequity and housing discrimination, black ethnic displacement, if we're talking about the specific things that impact us, there's no way we can really empower ourselves. Like just like how he's mentioning, even with the data, you still have to follow the rules of the courts. You still have to wait the same day of your court appearance if you have a right to counsel, and that doesn't mean you'll get there and they're gonna give you a lawyer. I've been through all of this, so I'm speaking from personal experience, not from no internet data. So that's why I'm asking. But can you just put that down if he's able to get back to me in regards to that, or you and you get back to me?
Like if he is willing to share the legal cases, or
If he has that information, or if there's a website, I'm not asking him to do no more work, he clearly has to leave the local. But if there's, if he knows another organization that
I was
may
gonna say,
assist
well,
him.
at that point, the whole job is almost done. Like their site compiled almost everything. You just need an attorney at that point to seal the deal. Especially with the legal cases, that would be like a basic and not wrong. Okay.
Yeah, he did say that tenants' attorneys are using this data to represent their.
But that's individual cases. If I could easily reference to help my own case, empower me to sue myself, that's what I'm doing.
I think it's a good suggestion, he did say, they're still
I'm
building,
honest.
yeah,
I'm
they're still
honest.
building.
Because
I'm
all of it's
honest.
public. Once you have a
It's
court case,
all
all of that is
public.
public. I had to find out the hard way because I put my credit card and all my bank statement, and they was like, you have to block that out.
Wow.
Everybody gets to know.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I'll follow up and let you guys know. So next on our agenda is the Pinnacle Group bankruptcy, something which is why Joel was here, something that Suki brought to my attention last year. Thank you, Suki, on that. I spent the summer delving deep into really intense corporate restructuring agreements on the Pinnacle bankruptcy group, and I'm not even gonna start hashing that out, because I think I'll confuse myself more than I'm actually explaining. But essentially, Pinnacle Group has 82 entities that are embarking on a restructuring payments that they have stopped paying since January.
What is Pinnacle?
Pinnacle Group is a large real estate portfolio operator within the greater New York City region. Their larger entity is Zarazai Realty Group, which is located in the Virgin Islands, but Pinnacle Group essentially started in the late 1990s, expanding into a large rent-regulated real estate portfolio, getting up to as much as 10,000 different properties until they had to start restructuring and obviously
slumlord properties.
yes, a lot of unattended properties, rent-regulated, large building units, and so I kind of thought this was like lost in the water. I've been emailing some of our council members. I also emailed Rita Joseph's office, being like, hey y'all, this is something that I think is really important. I reached out to Joel originally, or like, was on a rat race trying to find out how do I go about a large building inquiry, right? Like, we have Pinnacle Group as this name, or Broadway Realty. What are their affiliates? Because we know how housing, LLCs, whatever, you know, it's like, so what is this kind of like fracturing off into? And when I was going into the databases, all the citywide databases, it's like, well, this is gonna take me forever, like, as one person. Went to a meeting, Joel was giving us a presentation, who owns what showed up, and I was like, I think the holy grail has hit my laptop. I can finally search how many buildings or how many people or where exactly these owners are operating within. And so after that, Joel was like, wow, that's actually a great question, like, I can dig into this for you. It's like, this is great. And also has a better understanding of how to navigate these large queries with data that I don't have the sets. If I had the data sets for the citywide, which I do now, maybe would have been easier, would have been tedious, but like, would have been doable. This definitely saved that additional step and then allows for more targeted outreach and considerations for the Pinnacle Group. As of currently, what I'm hearing through the grapevine is that there are 3 buildings specifically in our district that had building-wide services completely shut off, that are now currently shut off.
This is very recent, right?
This is
Or
very
like
recent,
last
like
week?
as in like, yeah, last week. So what I imagine and what I know to be true based on the ruling and them essentially requesting cash collateral to pay up to date that was only gonna extend until July, and then the judge motioned against it. So like, we know that they're out of funding, and we know that within these 82 entities, there are still buildings that are being occupied, like there's still tenants within these buildings. So we know as time progresses, buildings are going to essentially continue to go past due on their amounts. And it's getting to a point where this is like around $600 for the building, like,
Right.
we're talking tens of thousands, 20,000s for
Wait,
some
what is it
building.
that they're missing? Their mortgage payments? Their
So, okay, so tenants have been paying their rent?
Yeah.
They have not been paying the mortgage on the buildings despite, and so this is where this is why we're going to court, and this is where a lot of the court proceedings were coming in, is that Flagstar, who was the debtor company, said like, we want our money, and we believe that Pinnacle's offloading their equity into their other affiliations and larger corporation, Zarazai, because they were still collecting payment past January, but stopped making payments on their mortgages. So like, and the judge is saying this in the opinions, like, they're still collecting the rent, but somehow they don't have money, you know, like, so we know, we're understanding of the process. My considerations now moving forward are what can we do as community members, knowing that these buildings are within our district. You know, how do we go about targeted approach? I shared the map with everybody, right? Everybody, are you on the committee now?
I just got it.
You are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, so I have to
Like
add you.
officially.
You are, okay, so I have to add you to the Google group. So I did send out the map to everybody that has those properties plotted specifically. The ones that I've heard about are 991 Carroll, 915 Washington, and 1296 Pacific Street. Between 991 and 915, that's 107 units. So we have 22 in our district, around 886 units in total within our district, that over the next few months, it is very possible we're gonna see building-wide services being cut off, shut off, and if possible, if not most likely, I would not be surprised if we see some of these on the lien sale coming up moving forward. if they do not find a financial, someone to finance and move forward. But if there's other people that have more thoughts, other information that they've read upon or know of, like, would love to hear.
Well, the only thing that that I know that they could do is like, people oftentimes will get a deal and pay it off themselves and go co-op with the building.
With the building
Like
itself.
Squatters, did
Which I
that
was
in East Village, that
Yeah.
was.
That is if you get a lucky building and you don't have a building that has been kicked down the can for 50 years
Right.
and you've got so much deficit in the building that the people buying into that co-op have to absorb that deficit as well.
Yeah,
Well,
so
maybe there's a way
991
to,
is-
What was
maybe
it,
there's a
30?
way.
I mean,
And I'm sure
you're
a
not
lot of
wrong,
people
but
in
it's a
that
building by
in Village
building
aren't in that building.
case, right? So,
Okay, let me see, so
Okay, are you-
991
are you
was
in touch
991.
I have, yeah, I have.
Fine.
Since like last week, we was able to get,
So
back
915
with,
was
like,
built in
electricity
1930.
and, hot water and heat and things like that.
Oh, Andre said he had.
Andre can update the committee on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so, last week there were about, I think, 2 buildings on Union Street, that had like their power cut off and things like that, we were able to get those restored. Like pretty much like probably like the next day after we found out. In a bigger picture, I reached out to both HPD and to DHCR with the deputy commissioner to try to figure out on a bigger scale, like what can be done. HPD does have some emergency responses when it comes to these particular things, because they're in bankruptcy, so
Yeah.
when it comes to those particular things they do, so being that you sent me the thing during the summer, towards the end of the summer, I was able to get that list to be able to say, hey, these are the buildings, like,
Okay.
let's proactively, start to go at it.
Yeah.
One of the buildings I know, like on Union, had like a sewer backup, which also affected the boiler, so like, but it was good that we were able to kind of like build those particular pieces.
Yeah.
And then on the back end, on the tenant organizing, because I think they have, CHC, yeah, they have them, so they've been doing, a number of things in terms of
Good.
like class action. Even the deputy commissioner even talked about that possibly maybe some of the ways in which they'll be able to.
Okay.
The problem, I think, just in terms of the agency, they're not necessarily an enforcement hand,
Yeah.
so it kind of works along with HPD and those particular factors, but they're supposed to try to convene a bigger meeting to try to figure out like what can be done, and that's been something that the council members been like kind of like pushing for.
So
Okay.
who's the enforcement hand, the courts?
So it would be the courts, that's one, because they were already in court, so
Yeah.
there are some things that they're supposed to be doing that obviously they're not, so that's court. But then, so you have short term, you have long term. Pretty much if you have buildings, like you're talking about with a cutoff, like there were like some buildings that were going to be cut off this week. I think those were prevented too. I'm not sure about the entire portfolio, but for me, you first work with the shorthand stuff. Like, let's make sure these buildings don't have the electricity cut off. Let's make sure that there's a boiler, working. Let's make sure there's some hot water. If HPD has to come in and, do some type of emergency response, let's do that. And then they have some sale. I think sometimes like when it goes through those particular court proceedings, they have the ability to go through the sale where people just auction, depending on who buys it, et cetera, et cetera.
Privatized auction,
So yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. So
So that's
Yeah.
really interesting though.
yeah.
That's very fascinating. I just
And
never
so
heard that one.
now I think in terms of the tenant organizing, it's how do we get in front of that?
Yeah.
I know it may not happen until like maybe January, February. Again, I'm only speaking on what I know, not the entire portfolio,
Yeah.
right? And so let's see. One, let's see what we can do in these buildings in terms of emergency repairs because of the fact that they're filing for this. Same thing with Con Ed, National Grid, making sure that they have those bankruptcy paperwork to keep the gas and keep the electricity on. It may be something that HPD can take on the bill for while this is being figured out. So
I think I
yeah,
have-
so short term and then long.
So I have more questions on that, just
Mhm.
because like as I look at the CD9 specific portfolio, all of these
Yeah.
buildings are before 1930.
Right.
So like we're already,
Yeah.
climbing up a molehill knowing that these are old buildings and considering Pinnacle, we can assume or possibly assume that the level of maintenance and care to continue operations may not be the most ideal, and also part of the reason why we're offloading and going about the restructuring in the first place. So in your experience, Andre, do you think that this would be like goes to a private sale? Who is purchasing this and maintaining it as a rent regulated unit and is now looking to demolish it and then go about
So,
private,
Luxury
public, affordable unit?
Yeah,
and turn it
It'd
into
gotcha.
probably be the
because
bank,
it's
the
now-
bank, the
False
banks
affordable
who
housing.
would
Right.
have the lien,
But
right? The
Yes,
banks
I think
Yes.
that's,
no, go
foreclose.
ahead.
no, continue, go.
No, no,
was
so
gonna say-
I would say just in terms of some of the things that I've seen, you do have it where, even if it's in a private sale, you do have it where like big other management companies and things
Yeah.
like that will take it. When you talk about those buildings that were made during that time, they have built in them, and it will depend building to building. They have built in them that it has to stay in stabilization indefinitely, regardless of what you do, how you do it. Ways in which that can be done is sometimes you will have like a rent stabilized building that has now got rid of their 421A because it's expired. They may go to HPD and ask for like an Article 10, which again keeps it in with, 40, 50 years of making sure that things are affordable.
Yeah.
Is able to do some types of infrastructure repairs. So it happens on a case by case basis, but it would just depend on what operator comes in. Sometimes operators decide to go co-op, right? So like all the stuff that you guys talked about, those are realistic things that happen. I don't know what they would do in terms of like a huge portfolio like this.
Yeah.
And how they would divvy that up. A lot of that does go through report based off of what would happen.
That's fascinating.
No, but at least these three buildings, I have to tell you, these buildings that people have been, like, I know these buildings.
Yeah.
And people have been living, I know people live in these buildings, they've been living in these apartments for decades, for a very long time. This is gonna be, and there are a lot of seniors in these buildings, so.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if we're gonna find that trend in a lot of, in some of these, not all of them, but in some. I would not be surprised.
Question. I think it's moving in that direction anyway, but I think, like, we got a vote coming up.
Yeah.
And from where I'm sitting, the most important part of that conundrum is, like, what do we want community and residents to have in front of them prior to that vote, right? So do they know what they're voting for? Do they know what they're voting on? Do they know how that thing that they're voting on affects them, right? I think from the research that I've done, to your very super explained point, we are sitting in a dilemma with, a small pool of people, and I use people as a loose word, who have portfolios that are too big for them to maintain. And that's not just the problem, but that also speaks to the political, like, I'm curious, how do we draw this into the political arena?
Yeah.
So that we can sort of break this down to what does this mean to us in the coming weeks, right? So we are, it's not just about, like the catchwords and the buzzwords of freeze, this one wants to freeze rent stabilization, this wants to do this. At the end of the day, the real, like, it's math, right? We've got a bunch of landlords who have had buildings over a certain amount of time with certain things that they got to not just be landlords, but expand as landlords beyond what they could handle. This is 2009 housing crisis happening all over again. But you take out the banks and you put in the landlords. It's the same calculation. They because of a lack of regulation, they were allowed to expand their portfolios beyond the point that they could manage, but how that pertains to us is that they were legally allowed to do that, consciously knowing that after these things expired, they kicked the can down the road. None of our buildings have had scheduled maintenance ever, and now they're going to be at the point where they're holding the city by the nuts because the city can't afford to take this on, like, can't become the default operator of all of this. That's not no taxpayer is gonna go for that, regardless if we're affected or not affected directly, like, we just don't have that kind of cash. It's too many buildings, right?
Well,
So.
they're trying to not be landlords. it's-
Right, exactly,
anything,
so
right?
we
Right.
either have people who are gonna
Subcontractors.
abandon their buildings, right,
Or
and that's
like
like, or we're gonna have a situation where, we have to understand, that this issue has evolved past our individual residential needs. And I have to say that out loud, just because it has evolved, it's a situation where whole communities and areas, like graphic bodies of properties are going to be affected. Like, so understanding how we can empower our neighbors, our residents, the people that we talk to, so that message is not just delivered, but addressed at the vote by November 4th.
Well, Suki did do the town hall, which was like
Yeah, so
very,
that
The
was
whole
on
committee,
the ballot proposals,
The
which is
committee
not
did,
about
the
it.
whole committee
Yeah.
did that.
Oh, yeah.
Just the ballot.
I'm like, let's break this sucker down.
Yeah, so ballot proposals, these are proposals that are
yeah.
really aiming to take away the role of the city council in
Correct.
land use and development decisions, which is not good for communities because it's really through our council people
Yes,
that we're able to make positive changes to local development.
correct.
So I can say it, I think personally, I would vote no on 2, 3, and 4. As far as, this situation with the rent stabilized buildings, and there could be more bankruptcies beyond Pinnacle. This
Right.
may not be,
I-
this may just be the first
I
one.
think you're absolutely right.
Again, I don't wanna say like who you should vote for, but just to offer a little bit of history as someone who grew up in the city, this happened a lot in the 70s and 80s, and at that time, the city was selling off buildings like en masse.
Mhm.
And in fact, this building where we are today was sold by the city as an in rem property. And
What does that mean?
they had, somebody bought it, a private buyer bought it, but they had to make an affordable housing agreement with HPD,
Right.
which I think just expired last year. So, these things have happened before, and, talk to your elected officials, talk to the agencies about what the possible solutions are, definitely. And don't forget state level too, they're very important,
I was gonna say that, I think it would be important for us to have a workshop, especially when it comes to, housing and land use. To let people know exactly what is in the realm of New York City power and what is not. Right, because there's a lot of things that the state absolutely controls, especially when it comes to investors. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that.
That's
you
how
know,
charters are
Yeah,
really
it's-
old.
like, I don't think a lot of people are aware that, I mean, it doesn't matter who's in office as far as the mayor is concerned, it's the state that dictates a lot of our housing principles and just policies, so I think that is really important, because I hear so many of these lawmakers saying things that they cannot do, and they know they cannot do, and we
Yeah.
don't know they can't do it. Right, so I
We
think
don't.
that would be a
But
really
they don't
good
do it.
step.
They don't have it.
I think when I think of like workshops and training, which I've been in conversation with the Legal Aid Society about, like what direction, I think that's something that as a committee, we will definitely have to keep our pulse on and also
Right.
consolidate, because the one thing is we find with housing is that it is so expansive.
No, it is,
So there's a
it's
lot
not
of-
opinion though, it's
It's not.
literally just legislation, like, this is what it says.
But legislation, it also does have a political affiliation, opinions integrated in language and the kind of restrictions and those kind of things.
So use what language they use, it's not to take the information
But I-
and turn it into anything, it's just to say, this is how the state and the city is set up. This is, this is what this person can do, it is no opinion, cause it's it's what it
Right,
is.
so you're
Civics.
saying more so like
Civics.
actual, you want a workshop or
Information.
presentation?
Yeah.
It's simple, it's
Well, I
information.
know, but these are very overarching presentations, so like any individual person, okay, so when I speak with Legal Aid Society about, okay, we were looking to do workshops,
Mhm.
and one of the things that I specifically focused on was maintaining our homeowners that we have already. What does it look like to go about estate planning?
Right.
That is one presentation training workshop that they wanted to do over a certain amount of weeks.
Right.
Right, because to develop that kind of expertise and information and have it be something that people actually hold on to takes time.
But
And that's-
to the individual over here point, I think we need to stop like, what's the word? It's losing me, but politicizing the immediate needs of people a lot of times. Like, I understand y'all a community board, but the mayor election is coming up, the charter revision is coming up, and this individual was the one that brought up, how can we get it out there? So nobody's saying you have to, Suki's gonna say vote no 2-4. But, you know, I might be in the audience and I might could pass out a flyer and that specifically says that. But the information you provide that entails somebody who's on the board of a ULURP committee for this community board is saying this is what this is doing. We looked at the information, not saying just because we looked at it, we're saying to regurgitate and eat our food. We're gonna give you literally what it says, even though on the ballot it's not gonna specify, it's like pages long of the charter changes that are gonna
90
be made.
pages.
But I'm just, okay, so I don't disagree with that.
I'm just saying,
but we-
let's specify on that for what we can in our capacity for right now. Because
I'm still not understanding that.
that's the individual who brought it up, that's what he was saying, to get the information
just
out
the
about
information.
these
It doesn't
changes
have
that's
to
gonna
be
occur.
so-
We're
it's-
not
you know,
talking
think-
about estate
Yeah,
planning
think
right
about what
now.
we do
We're
if
talking
you-
about the
if
charter
you take your
revision.
kids, American
and-
government, you know,
and
the
to her
preferences,
point,
bum, 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 bum.
I know, but I'm saying who is doing that?
We can come up with that, that's why
I
we're
mean,
here.
I would be,
I mean,
okay
you see me
with
putting
doing
in work
that.
right here.
So, Suki, we can ask Suki right now.
The door is
We can
open
ask,
for
we don't have to do
everybody.
another
The
time.
door is
I mean, it would be
open, but like,
volunteer, right?
If
So
you
I would-
have
I
a
would
source from that
definitely-
information in
I would
regards
definitely do it.
to
I would
state
definitely get
versus
it together
city,
and
which
send
is-
it.
you could do
Yeah.
it and you can have an expert that attends, so nobody says
Yeah.
it was from an individual who is not skilled in that field. That's what makes the most sense to me, cause my question, I was waiting for a while, I wanted to ask, how come y'all aren't touring? Because since I've been here last year, it's been the same recurrent, like, oh, how do we get it out to the people? And then I'm just here at the meeting, cause I'm aware of the meeting, I have to look online and present myself. But I don't really see y'all, you know, nowhere, no offense to no specific person. But the town hall, it was the same damn people. Like, how is that getting delivered to my community? That doesn't make sense
It's
to me.
really hard, and I will say, over the summer, before the tax lien sale, Jolie and I went out on foot to houses that were on the tax lien sale, handing out flyers, trying to make people aware. And that's just 2 people in a really big community, and no matter how much you talk and go out to people, you cannot force them to come to where this information is.
That's not what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Maybe if y'all didn't understand what I was trying to say, you could ask instead. This is not a personal attack to anybody, but I was gonna finish it with saying specifically, obviously we know we can't just footwork walk all day. I understand the community board is volunteer, I've been told the whole spiel. But we can strategically identify, can we do an event at Mega Evers instead of a town hall again? To where we're specifically talking about, this is the ballot proposal information before the upcoming election, which is literally like within this week.
right, so I'm not.
Which is probably too
I'm
late.
I'm gonna definitely I'm gonna call rules to order with this because it's almost 9 p.m.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you, girl, but I am one person and
I'm
operate on the
asking, this
same-
was a question,
No,
this
I'm
wasn't
responding.
accusatory.
Can I make my response to you? Because
You're
this
talking
is-
about yourself though. I'm
I am,
talking in
because
relation to the
I'm-
community board,
But
to this
every one of
committee.
us show up as an individual as we operate.
I'm
within
not
our
asking for
politics.
individual answers, I'm asking as a community person,
So then
can y'all
heard.
provide
Thank you.
me
We're
with
gonna
a
continue
response for how y'all look to at least do it that's feasible for us
So-
as a committee? Cause it's not just y'all here, it's me as well. That doesn't make sense to me.
And we
People
don't-
are asking and we don't wanna come up with solutions.
that. Okay, so continuing
Like, we don't need
So
to
we
get
did
into
talk about
personal
pinnacle bankruptcy.
opinion
But
and,
no, I feel
data,
like
politics,
Can I have some
how is
rules?
that helping
Can I have
people?
some rules in this?
Sorry.
Thank you. It's almost 9 p.m. I know all of us have stuff that we gotta do. We still have a good amount of stuff to do on our agenda. I really appreciate everybody's feedback on these things and I'd love this to be something that we continue working towards. Ms. Thang, what I just wanna respond to
Miss
is.
Thang,
That's how I speak.
no, don't speak to me like that.
That's fine.
This is a community
So
board.
we all definitely have our own agency in how we operate within the space as community members. This is a free capacity and we all do what we can. So if there's things that you want to do individually to do more, that is always welcome. No one is
That's
gonna
fine.
turn you
Y'all
down.
need to remember that
I was gonna
response.
say, if you have
This is short,
stuff,
this is short.
please,
quote you on
and
that.
just send it to me and I will put it in the
Something
group
simple,
chat.
not politicized, just for information.
Okay.
Hopefully I won't politicize.
Normally,
I'm
we
kidding.
try to work with Dante,
Yeah.
for any information that's being handed out with the community
Alright.
board.
No, I'll send it to you first, Joe.
There's
Okay.
some really great poem cards that Andre doesn't have now, but maybe he could bring them tomorrow to the yearlip, but they had them, they talked about them at the town hall. I don't know, did anybody go to the town hall?
I couldn't, no, sorry.
What time was the one that was here, right?
The one that was at the school that the yearlip committee
The
had.
youth
Yes.
town hall.
Yeah.
Which was great, I know it was, I
Well,
tuned
the-
in online, it was
the-
awesome,
But
it was
if we
very
had
helpful.
the,
Thank you, Suki, on that, putting that together.
the cards would be helpful to have.
Sharing them.
To share even here with every, that's a good way to communicate this information quickly and easily.
I if somebody would like to clarify, if
Okay.
not, I would love to like,
I mean, we were looking at,
Yeah.
presentation.
Yep.
And then we jumped onto something else and jumped onto something else, so here's what I'm going to say, can we just kinda, let's move together, okay? Cause we're kinda like getting ready to go all over the place.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, where are we?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it that we're doing? What
We're
is our
discussing
aim, what is our
Pinnacle
goal, what are we
we
doing?
can move on from Pinnacle,
That's
and we
what I
can,
wanna know.
we can move on to approve our June and September meeting minutes. Is there a motion on the floor to approve the meeting minutes?
Yes.
Seconded? Everybody in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Awesome. Okay, Google group, that has been confirmed. Everybody is also, motion on the floor for emails to be distributed virtually and openly. Do you have a second? Oh, wait.
Can I join the group?
I think I'm at,
That's gonna be my question.
it was originally just gonna be committee.
My question is gonna be, what are the rules for this group?
So originally it was specifically for the committee so that we can share information amongst ourselves and also go about resolution processes and drafting them as a committee. I think for that reason, I might keep it closed because this is people agreeing to have their information dispersed within the community or within the committee specifically. And having external emails could definitely,
Yeah, I don't want
You know,
anybody's email, I just
challenge.
wanna see
She's saying
the
no.
maps and the info.
the maps I can, the maps I can have sent to the actual board office, but for the Google group, it's mostly for resolutions and internal communications within the committee. If there are specific conversations that you guys are looking for.
Like any of the info that would help our committee, I would.
We can always request that specifically. I was gonna say you
Yeah,
can
but
request that.
I just wanna look at those maps by myself at home, I think it would help, I think it would help us
These
a lot.
aren't even on there, so the Google
Oh.
group is more so for intercommunications.
Alright, I'm just talking, I just want that.
Teresa, just ask me and I'll share it with you.
Okay.
It's that
I just
easy.
wanna look at the maps.
I'm not gonna fight you on it, like, all you gotta do is, hey, I want the maps, absolutely, I'll share it with you, I
The
have your
Google
email.
group is like us taking notes on what we have to do
Yeah,
together.
that's okay, I just wanted to see the data and the maps.
That's fine, I can share it with you, no
Thank
worries.
you.
The housing survey, we're gonna have to table this, cause I don't have it. Yeah, no, this is something I've tabled and it was something that we brought last year. I have not distributed this survey since then. I would love to bring it back to the committee. It was like a simple 10-question distribution, so that way we can get an idea of housing and people's feelings. The questions are very simple, but I'd love to bring them back before the committee and we can review them, change them, however we feel about that. So we can table that for next discussion, just because today's going a little bit
Also,
longer.
one of the other meetings is that anything that we're gonna distribute with the housing, if it is a survey that's going out to the community, they need to do it whereby they see who we're sending it to and to make sure that we're sending it to people within our community, not people who could answer outside of the community.
Okay, that's really.
And make sure everybody reviews the questions on your committee, because that, in the bike committee, the transportation
Yes.
committee, they did a survey. Not everybody,
I had responded, yeah.
yeah,
I
not
heard about
everybody
that.
in the committee had looked at the
what I'm saying,
questions,
yeah, I
so
heard about that one.
just make sure you guys all see the questions.
I appreciate it, so we can definitely do that, and if you guys have any questions you wanna add, those kind of things, we can totally do that. love to see it get better. And I sent it to people that I knew just to see if it worked, like these ladies right here. And then the housing profile, that's for these maps. We can table both of these for a more in-depth conversation for next time. That way we can lead into this. I did wanna do a little bit more with Pinnacle, but I think where we are is perfectly okay. I really appreciate everybody's feedback today and comments. Thank you, Suki, for showing up. I appreciate it.
This was a lot, this was really good, you did a great job, everyone.
Whatever happened with, the 118 Button Road?
Oh, it got approved, technically approved, so their motion, or their, geez, how do I say this? So the change that they wanted to make, essentially legalizing the removal of the fence was approved. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Legalizing the repairs and did not include the hostile architecture fencing. And they came to us because they wanted it to be legally approved as per Landmarks Preservation Commission, LPC. They sent them back to us for them to go about the legalization of that removal.
So who approved it?
The general board.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, at that meeting, I had different opinions, but obviously the community is gonna have their own responses. Suki and other representatives from the Landmarks District, the historic districts of Prospect Lakers Garden, had provided their feedback and stating that they approved the removal of the fence as well, and that was the general board consensus at that time. And also, some of our committee members weren't there, and also why having quorum at our meetings does matter, because when we vote on processes that operate here, that gives a stronger word when it gets presented to the general board. And because we didn't have a quorum, and I only had 3 people, that it wasn't a strong enough argumentation for anybody to consider alternatives.
May I interject?
Yeah.
I think it's an appropriate moment, as much as you mentioned historic preservation.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm an architect and preservationist.
Yeah.
And I'm appalled to see the number of churches that are being demolished,
Okay.
to build housing.
That's true.
Not that I have anything against housing, but
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, the housing people are a bunch of jackals. They don't give a damn about anything except profit. And I want to make a suggestion, which I want to present to you. These churches, apart from their historic value, they also have a very important community value for the communities that they serve.
Okay.
Even churches that or religious centers that have no architectural importance, they have a social importance. So I suggest that there be a change made to the air rights legislation in New York. 2 changes. Make it something that can be sold every 5 years, renewable, so that these buildings have a source of income. I say that because the excuse given to demolish these buildings is that they're dilapidated. And they don't have any, and if the communities, are social communities that are attending them are diminished, so they don't have the income that they used to have. A solution to that could be make those buildings, give them the right to sell their air rights every 5 years, so they have an income with which to preserve the buildings. And even though they may not be religious buildings anymore, they still continue to have a very important social function, either in that community or for new communities, people that are homeless. You know, there's a reason why these church buildings can't be turned into housing for homeless people or community centers, right? And I think that dovetails very nicely. So to do this, you'd have to create a air rights bank, so that these air rights can be sold to the air rights bank, they can distribute them. And the second thing is the air rights need to be distributable outside of the immediate vicinity of the building. Because right now, you can only sell it once, you can also transfer it to immediate buildings. I think it should be something that we should open up to be able to transfer it to peripheral areas. And that connects with another issue that's very important here, not just historic preservation, is how to deal with climate change. There needs to be a focusing on directing new building to areas where you can build basically a building wall to protect regions that are different. I don't know if you've been to London. London has a very interesting structure called the Thames Barrier, which is a structure, is like a huge dike that whenever the sea level rises.
They're building those all over the city right now.
Well, you know, because
I went on a tour like 2 weeks ago.
Well, they should,
They're being built all over.
well, there isn't one being built at the mouth of Jamaica Bay, is there?
Well, Jamaica Bay is a preservation, protected preservation area where they've removed a lot of pollution that was there, and
But they're not
that
doing
now it's,
anything for
it's
sea level rise, are they?
it's bird preservation.
Well, you're not gonna do anything at sea level rise in this entire area. So that's
Is
a
it
place where,
possible, is this like a conversation that,
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is
is it possible for us to possibly,
Like,
and table for the next meeting?
what about new business?
We already went through our new business.
Y'all don't ask if anybody has new business that's part of the community, or is this just for committee people to discuss committee dealings?
Since you brought it up, I'd love to hear what new business
I'm
you have.
asking, so I know
I'm
how this
asking
is
you.
ran, because I don't wanna be called out of order again, because I'm not understanding
Didn't call you out
committees.
of order.
I'm saying, I'm not talking about you, this
I don't know why you're looking
Let
at
me speak to anybody else on the committee who has professionalism. How does it work? Do y'all ask the community, do they have new business to offer? Are we allowed to, mention anything, or is it no? That's what I'm asking
Normally,
for, to
before
respect
we
the floor.
end, we ask if there's any questions, anything anyone wants to bring up, and he brought up the historical buildings.
Yeah, he
And
did
so-
that on his own, so let me just say, can I ask a question then?
Sure.
So my new business, like I said earlier, I wanted to inquire about what are y'all currently doing in regards to the homelessness issue, because every time I'm told to go to the community board, that's my only resource, and I'm being very disrespected at these community boards. So I understand if nothing's gonna be done, I'm fine with that. I'm not here to fight y'all. But if there is something being done, that's what I'm trying to ask, and I understand for the sake of time, I'm not asking you to go through all your initiatives, like you said, I understand y'all might flyer and things like that. But if there's nothing at this time, I'm just gonna quickly, for the last 20 seconds, say specifically what I'm requesting. I understand we can't uplift the homeless community directly with their personal immediate needs, but I believe, based off of the evidence and research, that we can apply more pressure in regards to these agencies that aren't being regulated, that aren't fulfilling their what they're supposed to do, because gentleman here, Andre, it's actually not true, because a lot of times if they buy it from y'all directly, they're supposed to follow it, correct, because y'all the ones facilitating that. But a lot of times they have sold it to another buyer who doesn't have to follow the agreement, for example, with affordable housing. And affordable housing isn't even affordable housing. So to not continue to go on a tangent, I'm sure y'all could bring that up for a later time. There's a deep necessitation, which I'm gonna speak plain, will piss me off as a community person. I still have to have professionalism, but I should be the one that's not on the committee if I do display any for rightful reason about what we're going through. And it's ridiculous how there is really no guidance, because you can't go to the agency doors. I'm not here to scream at any of us here, we're all trying to help, but I can't go to them, they're gonna call the police and tell me, go to Albany, they're gonna send you back and forth. So that's what I wanted to ask. You don't have to answer at this time, because I know time is of the essence, but I would like to prioritize to attend the next meeting, and I will keep asking this question until maybe we could do something.
Can I ask one question before we adjourn? What is it that specifically you want to see? Because if you give us a
Yeah.
specific, that
Yeah,
makes
that's, I
it
mentioned
easier.
it, as far as applying pressure with the agencies, like I know
Like, can you name
another.
which specific top 3, top 4 agencies you want?
With the homelessness, the Department of Social Services, and it's HRA that pays the check. I went through all of this, like I said, I had my eviction, I'm giving my own experience publicly that is very private for the case of helping others, because
Sure,
I've been
sure,
through it,
sure.
I can't afford to have shame, I can't, because we're going through these issues. So I'm in the affordable, I'm in the luxury building, I've been through it all. So I know the agencies, it's Department of Social Services, HRA is the one that pays the check, and the HPD, Housing Preservation and Development, is the one that oversees the housing lottery and affordable housing. They purposely, like you said, they don't want to be landlords. They don't want to be owners of anything. They rent everything. They contract out. They have contractors because they don't want to get sued. So they deflect a lot of times. And then even when you get into the shelter organization owners, like you had the Fortune Society come, that's private, and then they could do whatever they want, and then they tell you they're supposed to follow this rule, they're not supposed to kick you out from 9 to 5, but yet they still do. So even if you can't get this individual, you're homeless, this is what you're going through, we can't do much for that. What we can say is, these are the things that are not being followed. These are the violations to quality of life, to these humans. It's not just everybody's on crack, everybody's on drugs, because I was at the community board meeting where several black women said they don't want the bathroom on Lincoln and Ocean, which is where I'm at often, and I have pregnant refugees have to pee on the train station when they gotta go to their shelter in Queens 3 hours away because they just came from working or having to cook food at somebody's house, so they're traveling late. So if that bathroom was there for them to use, it could have been helpful, even for me. Why should I have to go piss in the park just because I'm a human and I spend time feeding the birds in the park? So we have to consider our vulnerable population, which is all of us, because we're not far away from that, and I'm sure everybody has their struggles. So I think the most feasible thing we can do in our capacity of volunteers, including myself, is identifying what the agencies aren't doing, where is the discrepancies, whether it's the funding, non-regulating, non-following up with these organizations, and with the affordable housing that a lot of times is a small minimal percent. I don't think it's true that we can't advocate to get more because they come through us. And the same thing I do here, I'm at ULERP, Suki knows, and we're advocating for the same thing. But we're told we only give recommendations. I'm at 3 other community boards, so this is a central theme. We have to do something if we claim we want to help each other and ourselves and our city.
Well, thank you. I think that's more specific and detailed and therefore more helpful.
I didn't want to take too much time, that's why I didn't really go deep.
Well, no,
But
if
that's
you,
what I meant.
if you want
Pressure.
something, no, like if you want something, tell me exactly, cause I may not understand from your experience if I haven't experienced it. I may not understand what you're saying it the same way. Like if I don't know your story, I may not fully see things the same way until the
I'm not
next
totally
way.
homeless, but I'll forever consider myself homeless because it's hard to get out of it. That's my point, because there's no real assistance. And it's not just about homelessness. Please understand what I'm saying. It's directly tied to our housing. That's why we're here. Because whether you're owning and you're going through deed theft, you're going through racial inequity, discrimination, it all follows back up. Eviction, you become homeless from eviction from being in a property or other means, whatever it is. But it's not just because of drug, substance abuse, or other things, or domestic violence. It's not only that. A lot of times it is financial discrimination, and the agencies that we're provided to assist us to get out of that don't. Like, I would take another time. I'm not asking for y'all to speak with me to get y'all more insight on how it is, but a quick example. You have to work for a minimum of 10 hours just to be eligible for the voucher. And there's real deep discrimination in these shelters with the vouchers. So I'm not saying we will be the ones to come up with an outside agency to make sure that the shelters are facilitating the vouchers when people present their housing. Hey, I got my house, y'all are gonna rent to me.
Well, can I, so I actually work for HRA and DSS. So, and I think this is where information is very important, right? The agencies only allotted a certain amount. It's the federal, we get money from the federal government. So it's only allotted a certain amount of money for your rent. New York City's rent is $3,000. I think the max is $1,800, right? To compensate for that, the city did City Feps, right? Which bridges a lot of the gap, not all of it, because
Of course.
rent is so high, right? It's the cost of living is so high that we have the standard of the city and the state is set by the federal government, right? So it's a federal mandate. The city now cannot say.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about more feasible, like with people themselves. So, for example, very quick because I know we gotta go.
But no, but even with the vouchers, right? The average time in a shelter is 3 hours. 3 years.
3 years,
because there are
correct.
so many people in the shelters. It's not because this is the city. We get fined.
No, that's not what
like
I'm
crazy.
saying. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm
But
saying
you get what I'm saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
It's such a voluminous system. It is really
no.
difficult.
I think
I think that's an excuse. No, nothing to you personally, but I know how
No,
the
it's not me
agency's
personally.
doing.
I don't personally.
I'm talking about. I have an
apartment.
apartment. Very, very simple.
Mm-hmm.
I presented to my what they call them, the housing specialist. The housing specialist for a shelter with 200 people quit. There's not one housing specialist.
Because she's stressed out. They're stressed out.
Whatever, but we gotta be realistic. Stressed out isn't a reason that you supposed to have a position to help this population. You don't. That's what I'm saying. We have to look into this and apply
But
pressure to that.
she also gets paid very little, right? She gets paid very little for that position. She has the turnover.
That's not what I'm
It does
saying.
matter.
Of course it matters, but that's not what I'm saying. If we look at that, that means okay, so people are supposed to be homeless then. People are supposed
No,
to
I think-
not
No,
have
we have
assistance.
to look at
But
different
also-
issues to tackle,
Yeah.
right?
I agree with that,
Yes,
but I'm
and
talking about
that's
what's
one.
feasible for right now.
But that is.
If she quits,
Okay, guys.
we could apply pressure. Quick example, like we're saying, it's about people who've been through this. Why isn't the agencies fulfilling these positions with adequate people who can sustain the workload or
But
making
that's a
sure they
larger-
have therapy, whatever
that's a
y'all saying
larger-
they need?
These are not.
So the district needs statement is coming up. Dante told me it's due by early November. So all of these things might be, he's probably gonna do a public hearing, all of these things.
It's like the Oprah,
We
people
have
say
need
issues,
for
they
more,
say, well, what about this?
you know, like if you
How
have
are you
need,
solving
if you
anything?
see a need for more funding for HRA,
It's not
that
about
would be
funding,
a
they use
good-
that as an excuse, say, I'm not getting paid enough, everybody always says they're not getting
But
paid
so
enough.
are you?
How are you getting people out of this situation? Y'all didn't even let me finish the point. If I present my apartment, you're supposed to fulfill the voucher, that's legal, like she said, they get fined. So I never said nobody did it, but now the program director has to do it for 200 people, which is less likely, and this is all across all shelters, it's not just one. If it was just one, we could say, okay, we couldn't work on that, so that is a bigger issue is the point,
So
that's
that-
why it's 3 years.
So that's a really specific, helpful point that you could bring up during the district needs hearing, that
So
there's
not
a
here, not
need-
housing, they can't help with that.
Well, they can, but the
Only for
district needs
specific
hearing will let
housing
them
within
take
the
it
district.
to the city,
Okay.
right?
For specific individuals, that's the only people y'all help, y'all don't
I
help the
mean,
larger
specific
issues.
properties that are within the district, specific units, specific housing for homeless people units, yes, but like a larger HRA.
Larger issues, y'all don't deal
I
with.
mean,
That affects the individuals to
Well,
get
I
in
mean,
that
what we-
in
what-
the first
so
place.
what
Maybe
we
you could
can
write a
do-
resolution.
The
That's what
biggest
I was
thing,
asking when I
so
said
what
it
we
in the first
can do,
place.
right?
If that's
So there's this thing called internet quorum, right? It is where it is literally followed, like to track all complaints and follow through on all complaints. It's actually viewed by the city council, right? If you call 311, right, because this is, once again, just information, you call 311 and you say, I wanna start an IQ case, because I don't know, to your point, my housing manager, she quit and now no one's voucher is moving, right? They have to, and there's also power in numbers, right? So to your point, as far as like any assistance that the community board can offer, it would be to kind of trying to push information like those out. So if you have this issue, if you have been experiencing this issue as this young lady, this is where we can go in contact, right? This is where we can, because now it's not just one person, it's 20 people, right? So I think change is slow, we have to remember that, change is incremental, so, and I hear the frustration in your voice.
Oh no, that's just how I talk.
No, I hear the frustration in your
That's just how I
voice,
talk.
but
I'm
it's,
supposed to be frustrated, we all supposed to be.
well, no, that's the state of, living in the state of stress, honey, is not good, that's why
I'm
so
not
many of us
stressed, frustration don't
have
mean you
blood
stressed.
pressure.
You're supposed to be
Right?
frustrated at something that's
But-
discomforting.
But that's one of the
stress
ways that we can, right? Because these are big systems that existed way before us, and they.
Yeah, we know all this.
Yeah,
So to
right,
get to the point,
so-
I know people gotta go, I'm not trying to I think we're going off for the point, people need to be helped, and that's the end. So you
I think you
could
communicated that
disregard,
well.
you could
communicated
I
that.
understand, you could disregard as far as applying pressure to the agency, cause I know you wrote that down, so now I understand y'all can't do that, y'all can't assist on the issue that caused it. So she said numbers, if as a committee, cause my other community board does this, and they actually had listened to our concerns, they have their own issue, I'm not saying they're better in any way, that's not my point. But in regards to us making these concerns, they asked the HRA and DSS representative to come and speak so they could tell us themselves what's going on, what's the issues, and then we, the people who experience it, we're able to present and speak to them and directly flow that way, and then you could get data and then see maybe what y'all can do on your own, cause I'm gonna do what I'm doing anyway. What y'all be willing to do, so you could do that instead.
The other thing you can do when you call 311 is
Alright,
CC
so we're gonna call the meeting adjourned, it is
This is a
9:11.
systemic issue, like they said, if the
Thank
community
you all.
board, they take
Have a good night, everyone.
There's nothing we can do either. This is New York City, this is the bucket of beer.
No, but there's a few ways they can do it, like you said, they can call insurance